Live, and I will wait for the confirmation. I think it's going to work. I've been pretty good with YouTube lately. I haven't been poking the bear directly, although I've been thinking
Yeah,
about it. Okay, we're all set. So let me hit the recording and we will get into it.
got it.
Hello and welcome to the Mastermind Body and Spirit Show. I'm your host, Matthew Belair. As you know, we are currently overcoming extreme censorship. So if you want to support this show, please share episodes far and wide, leave a review on iTunes, but most importantly, consider doing 3 kind acts wherever you are in the world today. Also, if you want to get backed up episodes, go to mattbelair.com. You can do it for free or by donation because they also deleted Patreon. So if you want to do that, you can do that as well. But let's get into it. Today's guest is an accredited holistic health practitioner, CHEK holistic lifestyle coach and corrective exercise coach, nationally certified fitness specialist, energy medicine healer, shamanic practitioner, and published author of Your Amazing Itty Bitty Heal Your Body book, 15 Essential Steps to Heal Our Body, Mind, and Spirit. Welcome to the show, Patricia Garza Pinto.
Thank you, Matthew. It's a pleasure being here with you.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get into this. Before we dive in, well, first of all, thanks to our friend Sewa for putting this together. She did an amazing podcast. She's an amazing person. And, she recommended you very highly, and I trust her opinion. And, as I look through your work and, a little bit familiar with your story, it's just very powerful. And I love how, you're balancing the CHEK Institute side with going into the shamanic spiritual practices and making it very grounded. And I think that's really beautiful. So do you want to just start us off with, giving the listeners a little bit about yourself and your background and how you got into the work that you're doing?
Splendid. Okay. Thank you again for having me. Well, I had mentioned earlier that the story is a deep story, and in part it can be slightly intense. So I want to premise it by offering a trigger warning around stories of sexual abuse and dysfunctional homes, which is actually where I came from in part. And that catapulted me into many aspects of life. Very early on, I had run away several times by the time I was 16. And the last time I ran away, my mother wouldn't let me come back into the tribe or home, which is something that is traumatic in itself. Nobody wants to be kicked out of the tribe. So I managed to live through that. And then by the time I was 19 years old, I was already married, and I was 4 months pregnant and robbed at gunpoint and forced to strip naked. I was being robbed by 2 gunmen who wanted the drugs that my husband and I at the time were selling. So hence the tumultuous, dysfunctional life. The paradox, the flip side of that, is that I've totally turned my life around, and I specifically work with women through women's empowerment. And I've developed a program called Divine Your Power, Health and Wellness for the 21st Century. And it's a women's training and coaching program. And I work with women who suffer chronic emotional and physical pain, helping them to create a stronger body, mind, and spirit. So here I am in this beautiful home of mine that I purchased several years ago, and it's called the Divine Mountain Retreat. So I work with private clients here and teaching them to tap into their inner child wound, their shadow. It is a holistic approach, mind, body, spirit. So I integrate eating for their body type based on their ancestors, meditation, conscious movement. It's not even exercise. I call it conscious movement now. I have a 2-car garage fitness studio that I converted to wake up their deep intrinsic muscle unit, which is a deep source of wisdom and connection. So it's a pretty intense program I developed based on my experience and my healing journey.
Wow. Well, that's a short story. That sounds incredibly intense and a very powerful, 180 story, from switching from a lifestyle to, that would created an experience like that to something that's so powerful where you can, transition and help other people who are dealing with issues maybe as challenging as that, or lesser than. And it's interesting because so many people who have had these deep traumas, if they're able to integrate them and have them not ruin their lives, essentially they become very powerful teachers and healers, because only other people who've gone through something like that are able to really understand, speak the language, and offer support. You know what I mean? And so I think that's really powerful what you've done, and just even healing yourself and getting to where you are. You do a lot of different work, and you've done some shamanic work and training with Native American and indigenous people and things like that. So when someone is starting the healing journey, I feel like you've got the healing journey to get back to square one. And then once you're at square one, then the sky's the limit. You need a strong base to start. And so if somebody is dealing with, let's just say, something as simple as self-worth, or something as crazy as, a very traumatic experience, is it a same process, or is it a different process for them to kind of get to a state of wholeness where they start to believe in themselves again, and, start to imagine a more positive outlook for their life?
Great question. Thank you for that, Matt. I'm not going to say it's generic, because it's far from generic. There is a basic foundation, though, and the foundation involves bringing them back into their body through their diet, through movement, through energy, breath work, meditation. So once we have that strong foundation, because if somebody's all over the place and they're an emotional and spiritual mess, it's really an out of alignment with aspects of self, it's hard to work with them. So starting with the basics, foundations, eating, movement, breath work, sleeping, stretching, everything. So starting with the basic foundation. Obviously everybody is different, so meeting everybody where they're at based on their own experiences, whether it's a wound from childhood, which I'm going to say all of us have them to different degrees. Mine obviously is a very extreme degree. It's basic foundation, and then meeting the client where they're at and taking to the next level.
Right. And so you do this in a, in a retreat setting. And if somebody's, let's say by themselves, and they're a little bit hesitant to even speak to somebody, where's their starting point? What would you recommend they do?
Well, I'd recommend that they find somebody who they can resonate, that they can relate to through their heart, because we have a tendency to stay in our heads. And when we're in our head, there's a lot of judgment based on my experience. There are a lot of questions. When we are allowed to feel within ourselves vulnerability, and feel that we can connect with somebody safely in that setting, then everything else in my experience flows. I mean, this place that I purchased, it's called the Eagle's View Healing Sanctuary, because it does have an eagle's view. It is created as a sanctuary from all the artwork that is deeply meaningful to the energy in this place and in the surrounding on my land. And it's not a lot of land, but it's enough to feel the sacred healing energies. I've had a lot of people come through my doors, from family to friends to private clients. And I've gotten so much feedback about how people feel so safe and so much love here when they walk through the door. I had a couple of women at different times, different clients come in, and within 5 minutes they were crying, and not in a bad way. It was a beautiful opening, a heart opening. And the first time it happened, I asked the client, "Are you okay? What's wrong?" And she says, "No, I just feel so much love here." And my heart leapt for joy, because that was my intention. Where can we go, especially nowadays in this society, where we can literally walk through the door and feel like you're at home, and feel like you're at peace, and feel as if you're safe, like that inner child is safe and protected. My role as a holistic health and wellness practitioner is to create the sacred space. That's the premise. Because without that sacred space, nobody's going to open up, and their inner child isn't going to feel free enough to trust you and the space that they're in to open up and begin the healing.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, because you know, in a simple way, if you think about going to a gym that has all the equipment necessary, you're in a space to develop your muscles and your physical body. You have every tool that you need. Now, when it comes to emotional healing or spirituality, if you go to especially if you're dealing with a trauma, if you don't feel safe, the person's a threat. So number one, if you have damage, everything's going to be a threat. So you need to be in a comfortable, safe place to even do something. And so when you talk about sacred spaces, some people talk about, you know, putting them in their houses, but I know that you've, you know, trained with different indigenous teachers. So one of the things that I liked is they always talk about all my relations, like everything matters, the rocks, even, you know, the trees, and everything's alive and it matters. And it's such a different perspective to have. You know what I mean? I feel like it's much more integrated, as you said. And so what did you learn, or what do you understand about how to build sacred spaces for yourself, and some of the teachings you learned? And maybe if somebody wants to build something within their home, because if we look at the world, I feel it's like this disconnected thing, right? You go to an apartment building and you're in these little cubes, so disconnected from life and nature. And for me, I'm in a town, I was telling you before we started, where I really want to get back out to a smaller town that has better access to nature, because it feels different. It's very different. And so now with all the 5G and all the towers and whatever's going on with that, it's probably not as ideal as being in the mountains. You know, you feel that fresh air, you feel the space. It's just a totally different thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's exactly what I experienced here. And I had mentioned also prior to our going live, I was called up here to this particular mountain. I've been coming up to this space, and I'll answer your question in a second. I want to premise it by saying that I was called here by Great Spirit. I was coming up here off and on, probably for a few years before I actually moved up here. And I left Orange County and, you know, the beaches and that whole area to do some really deep, intense healing on my own, because I can only offer my clients what I've given myself. I can only take my clients as deep as I've taken myself, and I've done both. Offered it to myself and done the deep work around healing. I would say that if somebody is in an apartment complex and they're moving in, or even if they're already there and they feel disconnected, the most important thing it feels like for me to say is to create a sacred space for yourself. And that can show up in many ways. So what I would offer would be to consider what is important to you, parts of yourself, and ask your inner children, because they're all in you. They're living and breathing in you. And literally, you know, little Patty, I call Patricia, little Patty, when I'm speaking to my inner child or my inner children, what do you want? What do you want to feel safe? How can I guide you into feeling safe and secure and nurtured and loved? So maybe you could set up an altar somewhere in your house. I have two. I have one in my living room on my fireplace, whatever it's called, not the mantle, the hearth area. I have one in my bedroom, which is more of a family altar. So you can set up an altar with things that are important to you, meaningful. It could be, you know, a trophy you received as a child and what that represents for you. It could be pictures of your family. It could be your favorite flower. It could be a little stuffed animal of a dog or a cat that you had, a guinea pig or something that, you know, a beloved pet and family pet that you loved as a child and it meant a lot to you. It could be, you know, some essential oils of a smell that resonates with you and brings peace and nurturance. It could be anything that's meaningful, deeply meaningful and beautiful. There are no rules. Your heart knows how to meet the needs of your inner child. And yes, we have been extremely disconnected. We've gotten away from the ways of the ancient, the wise ones. And that's why it was so important for me to come up here. The energy is so different in the mountains. And if you don't live in the area of the mountains or the ocean or the river or the creek or the hills, you know, consider taking a trip there and spending the day or a night or two in a tent or, you know, or a rental, and taking your shoes off and going barefoot on the land. Because that way you can connect with Mother Earth, Gaia, Pachamama. You can connect with the beauty and the sacredness and the powerful energy that she has to offer. And it literally comes up through the bottoms of the soles of your feet into your body. And there are many proven benefits around grounding and earthing. So there are many things you can do at home. And when people say, well, I don't live in the mountains, or, you know, it's a 2-hour drive to the desert. Well, you can still go to your local park, take your shoes off, lie down like we used to do as children on the grass and look up at the clouds and, connect, breathe. There's something to that old saying, stop and smell the roses. There's a reason why that saying was brought to us. Stop and smell the whatever, the grass, the hay, the pine trees, the desert flora and fauna. There's so many things we can do. I feel that, well, in my experience, it feels true to say that our ego can come up with so many excuses as to not to do it. And once we get over the hump and we take the time and energy to go somewhere, or even go to our local park and put our feet on the ground or the dirt or the grass or the beach and the water or the river or the creek, we're going to experience ourselves differently. That's how Creator designed it. That's why we have access to it. That's why it's here for us.
I love all that. You bring up a lot of great points, and I don't know if I've heard this somewhere or it was my own epiphany, but I remember just thinking when I was doing some, a lot of limiting belief work and helping people with, different things that they had in their childhood. It just made me realize that our inner voice seems like a 7-year-old. The person that we communicate inside of us is like, it's about a 7-year-old. It can function. It kind of understands some things. It doesn't understand everything. So when you're speaking to yourself, imagine you're speaking to a 7-year-old. You don't want to be a tyrant. You don't want to be not compassionate. You want to be as kind as possible to that inner voice, because that is you. And maybe that's our spirit or something, but it's interesting when you said, the inner children. And when you're talking about, the importance of grounding, number one is just getting out into nature feels so different. I lived in the mountains, as I told you before, and the difference in the way of life, the amount of happiness and joy, the perspective on living in a small mountain town or being somewhere where everything is surrounded by nature to a big bustling city is night and day. And one is much more connected to nature, and one is much more connected to the matrix and money and living. And you're like it's almost like one of those circuit boards. You're just a piece of energy on that circuit board, where when you're connecting to nature, that's life, that's creation, that's more naturally what you are. And so I feel like that is a massive thing to consider when you're thinking about your life and your location and things like that. And you also talked about the ego just kind of getting in the way. And I remember one of the practices, one of my Native American teachers, David Lombear, would tell me, he's like, go barefoot, and even in the winter, right? And he goes,
Yes.
for your prayer, he's just like, just go and I would do a circle and then pray in that circle, but make it like a commitment to yourself. And so a few winters in a row, I've done that, where I run in the winter, even when it's snowy and even when it's cold, and it's got to like, -20. And it's weird that my feet are able to handle it, probably because it's just training over time, not because of anything special. It's just the first time I did it, I did a little bit, and then you grow over time, right? You start with 10 steps, put your shoes back on, then maybe you can do 20 or 30, but it's interesting how the body adapts. But it was the practice of getting in the snow, and it always connected me, and it always, made me feel more relaxed. And even in Japan, they talk about forest bathing now, and right, the studies from going in the forest. And to me, it just is common sense. And you said, one thing I think that's really important is you said you were called by Great Spirit. And I'd love to ask you, how do we listen to, in your view, to the Great Spirit, the inner voice, to be guided by the true Creator? Because my Indigenous teachers, they'll call it Creator, and religious will call it God. And then I look at the Catholic Church, I'm not too stoked on what's been influenced there on the, on some of the reserves, and well, like almost all of them. And I guess I have this fear of like following the wrong thing. If like sometimes people said, oh, yoga, if you're doing these yoga poses, you're, calling in the devil or something. I've seen that. And I was like, oh, like, I don't want to do that. I was like,
Yeah.
I want to have flexibility. It'd be cool to put my toe up here, especially for martial arts, but I don't want to accidentally, be misled. And so how do you, teach people to hear, the Great Spirit or the Creator, and how do you view that?
Okay, well, the first thing that I would offer would be to, I would say ditch them immediately, but that's unrealistic, is to monitor, limit your intake and connection to anything that has to do with electromagnetic fields, cell phones, smart TVs, laptops. And yes, we need them to function in this matrix. We're all here, even up in the mountains, I can look over out my side door here, and on the ridge at a distance, I can see some 5G towers, and they travel for miles. Well, you know what? I used to resist that, and I used to have a story about them, like, dang you, you know. And then I realized that it's more important for me to open my heart and to accept them and the fact that they are here with us. So if I accept that these 5G towers aren't going anywhere, then I can open my heart more to love that energy, because ultimately I feel it's about love. So let me think about this here. Connecting. Okay, so connecting with source. I feel that is it's a practice. And yes, you know, our ancestors before us, before we had any of this, and we were connected to the earth and to creator, source, God, goddess, whatever, whomever. Sometimes I call it universal life force energy, great benevolent spirit. You know, we were not forced. It was natural in our DNA, in our body to connect. It was easy to do so. You know, the circadian cycle, when the sun goes down, we didn't have all the lights that we have now. So we had a different connection. So the first thing I offer my clients is to disconnect as often as you can. And it's easy not to disconnect because we need it to function. If I want to speak with my daughter, I have to pick up and she lives 2 hours from me, and my granddaughter, I have to pick up my cell phone to do so. So, you know, using the headphones, using the speakers, and, you know, the glasses for the blue light on the computers, many things we can do. Towards the evening, I have a lot of dim lights in my house, and at night, if somebody comes to visit me, the first thing I say is, look, you know, I like things dim in the evening. When the sun starts to go down, you know, I have 40-watt bulbs. I don't have any televisions in my house. I haven't watched television for almost 12 years now, nor do I have the desire to do so. So it's about disconnecting from modern technology as often as we can. And then when we are disconnected, taking the time and creating a practice, just like we brush our teeth, use the restroom, eat our food, creating a practice to sustain us, to connect with source, creator, whether that's in a 5-minute meditation. And if you're not meditating, 5 minutes is better than nothing. And it's going to allow you to gradually increase that, just like walking barefoot on the land in the cold. And I have also done that on the snowy trails. And I find the Wim Hof breath, you know, the deep breathing helps. And setting an intention around connecting with creator, asking your inner self, your soul, to please help you open your heart more, because I feel we cannot open our heart enough. And there are a lot of people that are disconnected from their heart, you know, from a source of, from a point of connecting with others on a deeply compassionate, empathetic level. Yes, going down into the matrix, into the big cities is extremely distracting. Talk about electromagnetic fields that disrupt our physical body and even can cause confusion, slight disorientation, frustration, anger. I mean, you know, you have a lot of road rage down off the mountain. You don't have that up here. So yeah, there are things we can do. And then I'd like to also add that what we put into our bodies is extremely important. I used to be a purist around that. Everything had to be organic. Everything was gluten-free, non-GMO. I would combine raw and cooked food with my meals. Every meal had to have a good healthy fat, avocados, olive oil, good raw sprouted nuts. And that's something that a lot of people, you know, that is also a discipline and a practice. And that's something that's very difficult for a lot of people down in the matrix. So if we're filling our body with a lot of junk food and toxicity through the food, we are what we eat, you know. So cleaning up the diet as best we can, because there are a lot of people that have a story around it. I understand it, around not being able to afford organic food, or I don't have time to cook meals. Okay, so what can we do? How can I meet you there? You know, how can we tweak things here and there to get you to at least be one step closer to a healthier, more holistic, wholesome lifestyle. Therefore, your inner man or inner woman. So there are things you can do to help disconnect. And first and foremost, the modern technology. If you have television, a lot of people are addicted to the television. Then I would offer for consideration to limit your intake of television and ultimately, cut it out altogether. The media to me is a source of all deep, heavy, negative, dense energies. And that's something that I don't want to connect with. Also with people, there are people that are very disconnected, and I don't want to say this as a judgment as much as it is an observation on my part. Who do you surround yourself with? What do they have to offer in terms of bringing you to a space of being more grounded within your mind, your body, and your spirit? If people are surrounding themselves with whether it's a naysayer, a negative thought, a negative word, a negative attitude, heavy, dense energies, that's going to pull you down and pull you away from your center. So working the practices that help you stay in your center. And for me, that means restorative stretching, mostly in the morning. Sometimes, depending on my schedule, I'll do it in the evening or even in the late afternoon. If I'm listening to a podcast, I'll listen to it in the background. I'll be on my mat, whether it's on the floor here or down in my bedroom or in my fitness studio. And I start, doing my restorative stretching, which helps, release stuck energies, right, Matt? Breath work, deep belly, diaphragmatic breathing that help connect you internally to yourself, and bringing in that powerful life force energy that helps keep you grounded and stable. So there's that. Drinking half your body weight in really good, pure, high vibrational water, and taking care around how you intake that, whether it's through a glass, or a glass jug. I have a half a gallon glass jug, and whenever I leave, I always take my water with me, because it's good and it's great quality, high vibrational living water that's actually run through grounding stones and crystals, quartz crystals. So your water intake is very important. The time you spend in solitude, or at least in quiet, because that's another thing. People, in my observation and experience, aren't used to being alone. And this whole CV thing that started last year was, I see the light in everything, because the duality, the shadow and the light, right, is everywhere. What is the light side of what happened last year? The light side is it allowed everybody, if they chose it, to go within into themselves. And it probably disrupted a lot of people who weren't accustomed to doing that. And, in part, I can say in part, it's kind of easy because I do that. I do spend a lot of time alone, and I love and honor and respect those parts of self that cherish that and that desire it. And then I also connect with people. So yeah, that's what I have to say about that so far.
Well, you brought up a lot of great points, and one of the main ones I wanted to touch on is the idea of we send an electromagnetic frequency and we also receive it. And the way that the matrix and city dwellers are kind of set up, and the addictions that come up, is just a constant receiving of a manipulated signal, whether it's the television or media or all these different things. It's all these inputs that we're getting, and we don't take that time to be in silence, to get a message from creator, the natural environment, you know what I mean? And so I remember watching Bambi like a bunch of years ago, and I noticed, when the birds flew up, then the deer looked, and the deer saw that the birds were flying, and they knew something was off. Everything in the forest is connected. So you have this information that is available to us, but we're not tuning into, we're ignoring it. And, I just think about if you were to live, let's say, in a cabin, and we'll just make it easy on you, where you're going to get good, clean food and water that's taken care of for you, but you have nothing else, right? And you stay there for 6 months. The way that you are going to operate after that is totally different versus somebody who is in, a New York City apartment building, living the hustle and bustle of life. And I'm reminded of this story from Carlos Barrios. He's a elder friend of mine that's unfortunately passed away. And he did an elders gathering. I think it was in like the 90s, and it was the last one that happened in South America. And he told me the story about this one elder that they got, and this guy was kind of like the highlight guy. He was like one of their top guys, and he was very eccentric and they're very happy he came. And so he was like showering at his house, and I was talking to his daughter, and he just goes, "This is dead water." And then he leaves the shower and goes into, a local lake and showers there. And it'd be so interesting how in tune that person would be after, living his entire life and way of being fully connected to the natural world. And this world that we're kind of speaking of is the artificial world. And what you're sharing are very simple things to do. And it has to be a commitment. And when you were talking about you're limiting your interaction with electromagnetic fields or television or all these things, I thought about the word ruthlessly. Really see what you can do to ruthlessly limit those things, because now you're giving space for something else. And so we need to be able to make the time to receive, whether that's walking barefoot, what you want to do, meditation, you want to do something, but we need to open that up. Just be bored, stop turning on the TV, and we're not even talking about social media and all these other things. And one of the ideas out there now with kind of this matrix world or artificial world with natural living is, in the Bible talks about you can't worship two masters. You can't worship mammon, money, and creator, creation. And so for your path and what you've seen, how do you help people move towards a more purposeful life? It's beyond materialism, right? It's, you're not doing your work to get more. And I'm sure in your healing journey, you're like, I wonder how I'm going to get a house. I wonder how I'm going to survive and live here and do all these different things. I don't know how. But flash forward to this moment in time where you have a space that you can offer to people, where you feel comfortable, where you've designed it from an authentic place, from who you are, is very beautiful. And a success by your own definition. I feel like that's important. We need to be successful by our own definitions. And most people think, well, money first. How do I do it if I don't have any money? But I don't see it working that way. I feel like it has to be connected to the creator first. And somehow it ends up working itself out over time after you've done the work or had the experiences necessary to, get to where you'd like to go.
Got it. Yes. And Matt, could you please ask the question again?
So when we think about that quote that says we can't serve two masters, we can't serve mammon and creator or God, how do you help people understand the world of materialism versus money and how they operate in this realm? Because most people that are in the artificial world in the cities are mammon first, right? Well, this is where the job is, so this is where I'm here, and I'm not, they've kind of shut off that connection with creator and who they truly are.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. Well, I always go back to the inner child. And there are questions, depending on the client and their needs. What would you like? What are you missing in your life? How would you feel safe and nurtured? How would you feel loved? Because through our jobs, we don't feel loved. That is, the only way, in part right now anyway. That could change apparently through trading, eventually bartering. But the job represents a paycheck, the monetary aspect. It represents taking care of car payments and gas and insurance and food and everything else, clothes for ourselves and our children. So that's all necessary right now. But when you go back to the inner child through your heart, not your head, because these ask the question through your head. Feel it in your body. So I take them through almost like a meditation process, sitting in stillness, just the two of us, whether it's in my living room or here in my little side office. And it's just asking the inner child first, how can you feel safe and loved? Because all the answers are in us. We have a tendency to search outside of ourselves. And that's great when we're first learning and we're first starting on the path. Then there comes a point of mastery. I'm going to stop searching outside right now because I know how to search for the answers within. So basically working through the inner child, because they will rule the roost until we meet the needs of our inner children, our sacred inner children. They will sabotage, they will throw the monkey wrench in, they will retaliate, they will throw tantrums, they will break up relationships, marriages. So through the inner child, and the inner child will tell me what they need. You know, I'd like to think of an example right now, based on a client, and it feels right in saying that one of my youngest clients that came was a 16-year-old male. He came with his mother because he was under 18, and they sat here in my little love seat there and connected with me in this small space here. And all he wanted was to be heard. We all want to be heard and seen. That's all we want. See me, love me. But when we're stuck in the monetary world and all we're thinking about is the next fancy car or the next fancy phone, we're not connecting with that inner child's needs. And we're shortchanging those parts of self. We're out of balance and not in alignment. So I don't know if I answered your question, but it feels true just to say that.
Yeah, I think you did. Is very beautiful. And I ask a lot of guests that question, and that's a new answer for me. And I do a lot of work with people to try to help them, connect with who they truly are. I feel if people knew who they truly were and knew how to, like you said, become their own masters, to find those answers within themselves and connect with, the creator that way without having a gatekeeper, right? Whether the gatekeeper is a priest or even a shaman or someone else, right? It's just, that's why I more resonate with a lot of the indigenous teachers that I've had. And I'd love to hear your perspectives on shamanism, because now we have things like, ayahuasca and sacred ceremonies and sweat lodges and things like that. So maybe you could touch on that a little bit. But I like how the teachers that I've had has always pointed back to you, because you have to be the one that knows. And I've never really heard someone say use the inner child to ask those questions. Well, okay, 7-year-old, what's that job that you'd want to do? What job would make you feel happy? What kind of life would really fulfill you? And take that logical mind out of it. And that's that battle that we're dealing with, or moving from head to heart. And
Yes.
in the heart is where you're connected to your spirit, and you're eternal, and that the creator isn't just going to let you die. Right. And so it's kind of letting that go. It's surrendering to what you'll receive. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's very, very financially well off, because he's playing the mammon game, and he kind of busted out there again. And, the last couple of years have been fantastic for him. And my thought when he was sharing this, because he said, I don't really feel fulfilled again, something's off.
That's
And
right.
he's like, I don't know where I'm supposed to participate in this world. I was like, well, there's a lot of issues in this. There's a lot of challenge in this world, which means there's a massive opportunity to participate in a solution that you're called toward. And so when we're not answering that call because we need that certain amount of money, we're putting all our time, our energy, and our focus
Yes.
into the system, and we need to unplug from that. And what I said is, this is one of the big issues with people transitioning is that I don't know what you'll receive. I don't know. You're probably not going to receive what you're receiving now, because you're receiving a lot of mammon, a ton of it. So you're probably not going to get that, but you will receive fulfillment. You will receive, your heart and your soul and your integrity and who you truly are. But the creator will provide for you. You're not going
Beautiful.
to leave you stranded. You're not going to be out. You're going to be provided for. But how much do you actually need? Is it required that you have this multi-million-dollar house with these certain cars and a certain bank account and a crypto portfolio and a bag of silver and gold and all? Is that, if you're requiring that and that's how you're steering, it's never going to be enough. You're not going to have enough safety nets. You're not going to have enough income coming in next year. You're not going to have enough savings. It's always going to be this mental problem solve of how do I get more money? And whatever that number is, it's not enough. No matter how much you have in there, it's not enough. And I've worked with people who are multimillionaires, and to the points of 10, 20, 30 million. And one time the guy says, I'll tell the story. I said in my coaching call last week, but he goes, we have this great call. And I was like, what's your purpose? And we get into it. And I can always tell when they hit it, because it resonates and they're excited, and they, like you said, they know the answer. I'm just asking them simple questions.
Yes.
They know the answer. So the following week he tells me, he's just like, hey, I really enjoyed our call, and After our call, I realized that, I wanted to be a billionaire. And I go,
Mm,
why is that? And he goes, well, it's not because I want the money. It's because I could help more people. And that's when he was being authentic. He didn't want it for buying yachts, or he did want to have it. But that's when I really recognized how strong the mammon disease is, the money disease is, because he had it. He had a massive abundance,
mhm.
but now we needed even more abundance to do the thing that he said it resonated, it lit him up. It was heart centered. It was all the things. But then it was like, oh, he just let it go. And I was like, whoa, this is a powerful kind of sickness. This is a powerful
Yes.
distortion that not a lot of people can get through. So that's not a
I,
question, but do you want to comment on that?
I would love to, because I actually have firsthand experience with that as well. So many things have gone through my mind, so I want to share them all. One of them is, and I'm not a Bible expert, I will share that I have a little bit of knowledge. And if I recall the story, there's a story where a very wealthy man said to Jesus, as Jesus was, teaching and making his way across, areas of Israel. And the rich man said, what I want to follow you. What do I have to do? Because the little part that the rich man heard Jesus speak about was so powerful, and it resonated with the rich man in his logical brain. And Jesus knew, Jesus saw his heart. Whether you believe in Jesus or not, or it's a story. This is a beautiful metaphorical story. Jesus told him, sell everything. No, get rid of everything. The rich man was put off. All of my wealth? Yes. And then follow me. Because Jesus knew, you're right, you can't serve two masters. If you're going to get caught up in that game of money and monetary value and what it takes to, and the energy behind what it takes to have the next fancy car and clothes or shoes, whatever, then that's all you're stuck in. You cannot reach the other side because you're so focused with all your time, energy, and being the energy construct that lives within you. You can't even experience what it would feel like, an inkling of what it would feel like to experience yourself differently in your heart, connected with source, the most powerful energy that created all of us. That's what I'm looking for. So here's my experience. I've been married and divorced twice. My former husband is a very successful real estate business lawyer. One of his clients was and still is a billionaire. Owned, a baseball team in Washington State. And I went on his yacht. It's called a Huntress. It's 185 foot. It's even bigger than a yacht. They're called Fed ships when they get bigger than 185 foot. It was 185.4 or 5 feet. He had a crew of 14. We traveled around the Mediterranean and flew on his private G5 to get from Italy to the areas of the Mediterranean where the boat was docked. Because when they get that big, you can't bring them into these little ports. You have to take I can't even remember what they're called. They're definitely not dinghies. The smaller boat with the captain and the first hand, whatever it's called, the first mate, and they come and pick you up on the land, and then they take you out to the Fed ship. And so I was on that Fed ship with a crew of 14 and 3 other couples. One of the other gentlemen was a billionaire, and he was the head of oversaw the European Union. And then the other billionaire was the ambassador to Spain at the time. And this was years ago when I was married to my former spouse. So I've been in that lifestyle. I've experienced it. I've traveled and dined at some of the finest restaurants in the world. And I walked away from it all. You know why? I lived in a house in South Laguna Beach. It was the first house built on the hill in South Laguna. It was called Hill House, and it was built by the Eastman Kodak family from Rochester, New York. It was their summer beach house and maids' quarters downstairs and everything. I lived in that house with my then lawyer husband. And one day when my husband was down out on the Big Island developing the last development on the Big Island called Kohana Iki, he was traveling back and forth on business. I had a lot of time by myself. And I remember I started to feel frustrated with my life. I was 49 years old. something like your friend, your client was missing. I didn't know what it was. And I remember leaving, walking out of my bedroom to go through the living room into the dining and kitchen area. And I stopped dead in my tracks in the living room. And I was led to stand there in a corner of the living room while the sun was setting and the walls were painted like, beautiful colors, not just white or beige. They were beautiful colors. So when the sun set on the walls and on the antique furniture, it had there's a beautiful lights in the room. And I stood there purposely, literally like this. And I scanned every single piece of artwork, every single antique, hand carved, antique and sculpture in that room. And I looked out through my back courtyard and looked at the beautiful indoor outdoor fireplace. I turned around and looked behind me through the view, and I was looking out at the Pacific Ocean. And I took it all in with my eyes. And I knew, you're going to walk away from all this because this is not serving you. This is not who you are. This is not allowing you to truly discover your heart and your true essence, because you're so distracted in the matrix of the fine dining, the Harlan boutique expensive wines, the yachts, the 5Gs, the whatever. And I made the conscious decision to get a divorce, much to my husband's chagrin and devastation at the time. And there was a time right after I walked out of that marriage, I was separated from him for a year because we were going to try and see what was going to happen. He was hoping that I was going to come back to the marriage. And I was having dinner at the time with my friends, with all our fancy cars and big diamond rings. And I told my girlfriends at the time, sipping my martini, that I was leaving my husband. And they were taken aback and gasped. What do you mean you're leaving? You're walking away from this lifestyle? That's the first thing they said. And I said, I have to, because if I stay here, my spirit's going to die. So I want to tell you now that I had no idea how my life was going to turn out. I was being taken care of all those years by that husband and by what he represented and what he brought to the table monetarily. That was my life. I didn't have to worry about a penny. And the paradox is, when I was a young child and a girl and a young woman, I was on welfare at one time and had food stamps as a single parent to care for my daughter. So I've experienced the extremes, from the poverty to, working myself up slowly, to being married to this wonderfully well-off. I call him a king in his castle now. He lives by himself in that house with the dog, because that's what he chooses for himself. He can walk away from it, but that's not in his heart's desire. And that's okay. That's his path. I knew I had to follow my path. My heart and spirit guided me. And I didn't know what was going to happen. I just knew that I had to trust the process and trust that part of myself that knew that there was something greater than myself that I wanted to tap into.
Wow. Well, that's a very beautiful and powerful story. And it just kind of makes me think about, the fanciest and most luxurious of prisons possible, because I've experienced some very beautiful environments, some great luxury. Let's say you get to go on the yacht, right? You got the yacht, you got a helicopter that lands on the yacht. It's super cool, right? And everything is, you got the maxed out food, but who are you with? Do you like them? Do you not like them? Do you like yourself? Then you get that boat, right? And then you get to go to the finest wine tasting and the finest dining, and everything's being served. And you get to drive it. For me, like, I like cars. So the dopest car, you get to drive it. I got so much money. I don't even care about the police, but it's going to be empty at the end of the day. Yes. Because all it is it's in the material realm. It will be fun at first, and it will be, no doubt about it. It'll be tons and tons and tons of fun. But if you play it out in your mind, if you had all of these luxuries, endless luxuries, there's going to come a point where it's going to be empty, because you want to know who you are. And you contrast that with building your own life on purpose, consciously. I like to use the analogy that most people, they don't consciously create their life. They're just unconsciously being pulled along to the next opportunity and kind of really being steered towards where can I make the most money? Where's the easiest place to make the most money? But that doesn't test who you are, what your grit, what you're made of, who you came here to be, what you want to experience, what you want to contribute. All of them, like you said, you said, I knew my soul was going to die. And I did a podcast with David Weiss, and he said something that really stuck with me. And he said, the meaning of life is to not sell your soul. And most people would kind of receive that in a way where you look at these musicians that talk about selling their soul, and in Hollywood talking about selling their soul. And I agree with you about the TV. I do think that television and influence and everything out there is the most dark thing possible. It's created by darkness, and it intends darkness. And that was one of the things with the podcast. I wanted to create, light and conversation and opportunity to have a different input out there. Shoot, I lost my train of thought for where I was going. But
may I add something to that?
Yeah, sure. That'll help me. It'll come back to me.
Okay. I'd like to share also that the gentleman that owns the yacht, last I heard, he was still alive, and this was probably a couple years ago. I asked my ex, hey, see, yeah. Anyway, here's the point. All the money in the world that he has, and that, created the lifestyle that he's become so accustomed to, could not take away his Alzheimer's. He's lost his mind. Okay. So is it an illusion? Okay. Is it real? Can it save you? No. So, and the other thing was, he has one son. He has other children, but I'm thinking of his eldest son. And of course, they're all what we would call trust fund babies. And I get that. I have a small trust. The point is that he and his son were estranged because his son wanted the money before he was of age, and his father said no. And then they clashed like two titans. I want my money. No, you can't have it yet. And they didn't speak for the longest time. I don't know if they're speaking now. But so there's a lot of, they don't have any different, their problems are no different than somebody without money. See, it just seems like it's more of an energetic pull. Like you said, the prison, it can turn into a prison. Yes. I know somebody else who was on that yacht with me, and, he's suffering from cancer and he's trying to heal it. Like, wait a minute, we're all going to die. Can we live purposefully? Can we live purposefully? Can we die purposefully? That's the question, because we're all going to die. Our next breath, Matt, is not guaranteed to us. So I can tell you right now, without a shadow of a doubt, that if I knew that I had 5 minutes left to die, I would feel peace in my heart, because I've done a lot of work up until this point around healing my wound with my daughter, who's 42 years old now. I've learned to become a better, more connected mother with my daughter, therefore my granddaughter. So I'm able, and we are all able to heal 7 generations past and future, as you know, by doing this deep, purposeful work. So are we living purposefully? And what does that mean? Because that means something different to somebody else. I knew also, without a shadow of a doubt, because of the trauma that I experienced as a child and a young girl and a woman, that my role here is to lift up specifically women. I also work with men, but specifically women, to empower them, to get them back in their bodies and their heart. Because when we're in our bodies and in our heart, we can make better decisions. We can live more purposefully. I mean, it's not a secret to say that there's a lot of anxiety and depression, and suicide rates have gone up. All the freaking prescription drugs in the world cannot help that. Why? Because we're missing that void, the connection to Creator, the connection in our heart to the land. We are from dirt. We will return to the dirt. So let's connect with the dirt, metaphorically and literally.
Yeah, I love that. And I remember what I was going to kind of finish with, which you know,
Perfect.
which goes along with what you're saying again is, David said, David Weiss said, the purpose of life is not to sell our soul, but it's not in that big way. It's also in the small micro ways, in the small little decisions. It's little by little by little. It's death by 1,000 cuts, right? And so you compromise and compromise and compromise and compromise until you forget who you are. And when you forget who you are, you're not going to be connected to the source. That, honoring who you are is, I think, a way to grow your connection with source, because I believe the creator and creation and life wants you to be fully who you are, to express fully who you are. And that's going to, for you, be the most fulfilling way to live, like when you're going to die, because it's like, did I come here and grow in the ways that were most meaningful to me? And it feels like this whole world is brought up to distract you from that power, because if all of us did that, it would be such a harmonious, beautiful environment, because we would be fulfilled, we'd be appreciated for our tasks. But it's always, what can I get? And I give this new little question that I give people, are kind of thought experiment when I'm coaching now, is I say, okay, design me your perfect job, right? Design me the job that is exactly what you want to do. And I'm a billionaire, so I'm going to pay you 300 grand a year. Is that enough? Yeah, you can live on 300 grand. Okay, design it perfectly. I'll give you 300 grand a year plus the vacation days you need. They design the job in detail, and I say, now go do it. I have no idea how much you're actually going to get paid, but you already know what it is. And you talked about, this experience of knowing if you die, you're gonna be able to kind of be at peace with that. And when you look at near death experiences, you see these overarching themes of people saying, they don't go, oh man, I wish I made more money, or I wish I tried to be more successful in business. It's all these regrets of not following the things that were truly near and dear to them, to their heart, not living in an honest and authentic way for who they were. And I had that experience too, and I was with my partner. And I've said this on the podcast before, so I won't bore people with it, but when I thought I was going to die off this edge of this cliff, I had to go through my death experience. And I thought, I guess my work is done, because I can say for sure that I am not as productive as I want to be. I waste a lot of time. I waste a lot of days. I'm really hard on myself. I feel like I could be doing so much more. But the thing that I can at least say is true is that I try, and I ask each day to be shown what I can do, to please be guided, to show how I can make a difference, to try to honor myself and life and creation in the best way that I can, to provide value, because this thing is so much greater than me. Like I have to put on one pant leg at a time, one shoe at a time. I have to focus to drive my car. I know so little about life and reality and creation and spirituality and what it means to be alive, even though I do the podcast. And so it's that honest intent to be guided by something benevolent and beautiful and true and grand that is bigger than me, and to want to cooperate with that environment. And to go back to, again, that idea with the indigenous teachers saying all my relation is, it's the integration of that, right? I don't want to be bouncing around and chopping down the forest and ruining the poor beavers' houses. I want to be guided to harmonize with all of this creation. So I'm sitting there, and I get to be here too, and you're here, and it's a very beautiful and magical experience. So do you want to comment on that? That was just a rant.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I love the fact that this is all very organic. It feels very natural for me. You triggered a story too, based on my experience. One of my exes, when he was in high school, he used to love woodworking, and he made a couple things in high school in the woodworking class. One of them was a beautiful, like an inlaid pedestal, like to put a sculpture on, which his mother still has. And the other one, like a key, big wooden key, really nice work in high school. And just like, most people after high school, you're forced onto college, at least the idea of going on to college. I didn't do any of that. And his father was a very successful cardiovascular surgeon. And he lived in a big house in San Diego and a wine cellar ever since he was a child. So he had a taste for life. So he did the right thing as a good boy, and he went off to college because that's what his parents wanted him to do. He shared a letter with me later when we were married that he found. And when he shared it with me, I could tell based on his reaction that he was, at least my experience of his reaction was that he was sad. And the letter was from him in college. He wrote it to his parents. He was up north. His parents are down south there in California. He wrote the letter to his parents and he said, you know, college is okay. And I'd really like to get back to woodworking. I want to be a woodworker. His parents were against it and he never fulfilled his dream to be a woodworker. And I know that to be true. That was a void in his heart. He never fulfilled his desire. He fulfilled the desire of somebody else based on the program belief that you need to go to college to be successful, right? So years and years later, after he was an older man, there's an article in the local newspaper where we lived, and he showed it to me. He went out his way and brought it to me. He said, look, read this. And it was an article about an older gentleman who was retired, living probably 20 minutes from where we lived in Laguna Beach. And the article was based on the fact that this gentleman, after retirement, he created this whole woodworking office or woodworking shop in his home. And he was making beautiful pieces of furniture. He was being creative. He was following his heart's desire, and nobody stopped him. And so, you know, my ex-husband at the time saw it. I said, why don't you do this? You know, money wasn't an object for my former spouse at the time, still isn't. Why don't you do this? You could build it. Oh, no, I couldn't. I can't do that. And to this day, he's never done it. So is that going to be a regret on his deathbed? Wow, I really wish I would have followed my heart's desire. He could still do it, but you know, everybody's on their own path. So yeah, it's never too late.
Yeah, that's another powerful story. And you're exactly right. It is never, ever, ever too late. And often the universe might throw some sort of harm your way, like you might lose a job or you might get injured when you're way off course, as an opportunity to reset. So it's always there knocking on the door. And sometimes too, for some people, they're supposed to be asleep for exactly how long they're asleep for. And then boink, they wake up. And a lot of people have that opportunity where they see the light or they see where they can go, but often they get afraid and they don't have the courage or tenacity or spirit to follow it. And so that's really the challenge, is to follow that, to continue to move into the unknown, you know, following your heart's desire and who you truly are, but it is always available. There's, you know, this has been really beautiful and I've been enjoying all this. There's one thing I definitely want to ask you before we close it. You've
Sure.
worked with different elders and you've worked in shamanism and things like that. And there's a big surgence on, you know, psychedelics and, you know, ayahuasca and things like that. And having, you know, you've got shamans in Peru that are working with medicines, and you've got Native American teachers that work more with the sweat. Then you got a lot of younger ones. I've been to these festival scenarios. You got early 20 somethings with this hair and a bag of crystals, call themselves shamans.
Yeah.
And it's not the same as the ones that I've seen that are legit and are, you know, freaky, incredible. Like they're a different person. And again, I don't know, this is the way that I think about things, but like, you know, if you meet like a power builder that's like a strong man and you see that person in the physical specimens, like, I'm a strong man. You're like, yes, you are. You look like a, you know, holy shit, look at you. You know, it's
Yeah.
the same with the shaman most times in a spiritual sense. If you have the like awareness to you sit down and talk to them, and then it's like, whoa, this person is resonating peace, certainty, kindness, compassion, wisdom, all of these things that just easily resonate. And it's a powerful thing. So I'd be curious your interest, if someone is curious about shamanism and what it is from your perspective, if they like an experience, and your view on the use of a psychedelic like an ayahuasca or even mushrooms or something like that.
Okay, thank you for asking. That's some of the work that I do, and it's usually, doesn't matter now, but it's usually something I don't, you know, really say. But I do work with sacred plant medicines. Funny thing, I actually have a card in my wallet from the Native American Church, which gives me permission to do so. So I want to kind of throw that out there. It's in here somewhere, but yeah, this little card here, I don't know if you can see it, but nonetheless, the small print in the back says, based on the First Amendment, she has the right to carry birds of prey feather, to work with plant medicines, and it does state ayahuasca and marijuana, and I think it's peyote. But anyway, here's my experience of shamanism and my belief around that. I don't claim to be a shaman or a shamaness. I claim to be a channel for healing. And I claim that I've done such deep shadow work, traveling to the underworld within myself, that I can hold sacred space for somebody to do so. One of my grandmothers was born in Mexico. Many of my relatives were. Grandma Celia was born in Monterrey, Mexico. She was a curandera, healer. And she used universal life force energy. Some would call it Reiki. Nobody certified her. She knew what her gifts were and she used them. And so she would heal people with her hands, doing hands-on healing, and also using hierbas, herbs, whatever their needs were. She intuited it and was led to guide them to certain herbs. So that is my lineage. I've taken a couple courses through the Alberto Villoldo, the Four Winds Society, and I've worked with other teachers. One of them is Thomas Pinkson. He's a late 70s Huicho shaman teacher. He's here in California. So that is my experience. I use the spirit, my grandmother's spirit, and call her in when I do my work, and I know she's with me. And I do agree that there are a lot of young people that have jumped on the bandwagon of shamanism and crystals and sacred plant medicine. And I use the term sacred very powerfully because it is sacred. I feel that there's definitely a place for it. It's not for everybody. When I work with clients in that regard, I'm intuited to do so. And I've had conversations with people over the phone and vetting the possibility around working with them. And I've said, I don't think you're ready. I'd like to, suggest a therapist or something. Let's get you more grounded and, and then we'll have another conversation later. The very powerful, beautiful tools, the sacred plant medicines. I don't know if that was enough. If that answered your question, ask me more. Ask away if you want.
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess it's the beginning. I think, I see a lot of people explore. I've had different views in my life around plant medicine because I did experience ayahuasca and it was very powerful and very helpful. And then as time went on, I was, in there before it kind of hit the mainstream. And then, plant medicine and psychedelic medicine really hit the stream. And I saw, some people holding ceremonies that, really had no business doing it. And I think that there's definitely a danger to that. I feel like
Yes.
the ayahuasca certainly has, if done correctly in the right environment with the right teacher, is a massive catalyst for you to have that awakening.
Mhm.
And then I was disappointed to hear people that, like, oh, you did it. So you kind of saw, you know what I mean? I know that you see it, you whatever that is, whatever you cannot not see it, but then they didn't walk the path. They just went back to what they were doing. It was like going to a carnival and then, knowing what you should do and how you should operate for yourself. I'm not telling you what to do. I just know that you saw that. It's kind of like this main difference of I'm going to serve creation fully in my own way. So now you're back doing this and the same thing and you're not integrating any of it. So it became a little bit disappointing. And then I thought about, I've heard some people say, well, if you mess with that, it can open up into these other entities and these spirits. And there's all these different words for like this spirit world to allow them in. And that guy's like, oh, like this, could I have opened myself up to that? I don't know. But the experience that I've had on these psychedelics were very powerful, but I feel like I did them in a way that I was trying to honor that. Not mushrooms when I was younger. That was just to see what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to see what was going to happen. And so I guess as I get older, I'm reorienting, my own experience of, is that something that I might want to use as a helpful tool again, or is that something that I kind of put away? And I guess I would, if somebody wants to do mushrooms or they want to do ayahuasca or they want to see a shaman, how do you want to go a little bit deeper after what I said, whatever I said, or just direct it back to me?
Yeah, let me think about that. Yes, I want to say that there are definitely portals that are open. And I have my own experience with ayahuasca. Definitely portals. Set and setting is extremely important. I've heard stories about people getting together. Oh, I got some, ayahuasca online, or really? It's like, do you realize what you're getting into? Do you realize the depth and the power of this medicine? She's sacred. And you're just hanging out, drinking medicine and seeing what's going to happen. And the same with the sacred niños, the mushrooms. I feel that marijuana is a sacred plant, right? So yes, you can open portals. Set and setting is extremely important. The sacredness of the energy. When I host ceremony, I open up all the directions, calling in, all 6 of them, and calling in the spirit of the luminous ancestors, the jaguar, the hummingbird, eagle, condor, grandmother, grandfather, everybody, calling them in for protection. And having deep reverence for the medicine is extremely important. I don't feel anybody should be messing with it because it's nothing to be messed with. I knew 2 people years ago when they had their first and only ayahuasca experience. It wasn't held in a sacred space like that. And for a short period of time, both of them lost their minds. So you can consider that, a dark source, an entity that came over. So it's very important to have a heart and set the sacred intention and the setting, and then those that come and participate the same. What's your intention working with the medicine? Are you ready? Do you have the wherewithal? Because I'll say it, she'll kick your ass. She's going to give you exactly what you need. There's one time when I was in the deepest fear of my life, and I remember looking over at a clock in the other room, and it was the longest 20 minutes of my life in that fear. And I begged her to take it away. And I knew why it came up later. And it had to come up. Whatever is in you, she will reveal to you over time. Because there are sometimes on medicine when you're just be in total bliss and I have butterflies on my wrist. Well, that's great, because that's a part of who you are. And then there's also the shadow. And man, when that shadow shows up, you better be freaking prepared, because it ain't fun. And it's interesting because I don't what I would call dose out anymore as a facilitator. I put a drop on my third eye, a drop in my heart, and a drop in my mouth, because she's in me. When you work with her long enough, the essence, she's in you, so very sacred, very powerful, very life transformative. Somebody asked me years ago when I was working with a spiritual therapist at the time, she had one experience with ayahuasca down in Peru. She asked me, why do you do so much plant medicine? And I laughed, and I said, because when I was in my early 20s, I was trying to discover who I was and why I was doing what I was doing, like selling heroin and working as a prostitute. I wanted to discover why I was led to do those things. And so I invest a lot of time and energy and money in psychotherapy, traditional psychotherapy. None of those therapists took me to where my first ayahuasca ceremony took me. Grandmother took me hard, fast, and deep. And she revealed to me that was in me at a cellular level and a deep conscious level, a memory that I had forgotten since I was 16 years old, which was very traumatic. It was a traumatic memory. My ego wouldn't reveal that memory with the therapist, and they couldn't draw it out of me. Well, she did. Sacred medicine revealed it to me, and I was able to heal through that within that time and that night. And the other thing I'd like to add is that when I shared with one of my teachers a little while ago that I was working with the ayahuasca, he said, great, and he gave me some tips around. I have another teacher that I work with who's my mentor. And one of the other teachers said, because it was getting really popular in the West, he said, people aren't understanding the depth and the power of the medicine and the sacredness. And I said, I hear you. I hear you. And he said, and they don't realize it's not the night that you're on the medicine. It's the afterwards, the processing, like you said, the integrating. What are you doing with all that information that you just got downloaded? Is it going to blow your mind? Do you know what to do? Do you know how to integrate it? Are you going to be able to heal through it? And sometimes it happens over days, weeks, months, and even years. So I would offer that it's very, very profound, very powerful, and extremely sacred. I bow my head to the sacred plant medicines that are gifted to us.
I love all that. No, I think that's a very powerful answer. I totally agree with what you're saying, and the sacredness and the power of it. Yeah. Do you know what you're doing? And it's like people think it's like this fun experience. No, no, no. If you want to think about the thing that could the most amount of horror you could ever imagine, and you're not getting out, and it's only like they let you out when you're ready. You know, grandmother lets you out, and that's kind of why I like. You know, they call it grandmother because your mother and your grandmother, they'll tell you the truth. They love you, but
Yes.
they're going to show you the thing that you did wrong or that you need to heal. It's like Buckley's for your soul, but it's horrible. Like it can be incredibly dark and absolutely horrible, and facing it full on, you know. So it's not like you're going to this magical mystery land of pixies,
No.
although you might get that, and that's really wonderful. It says like your mother's love times 100 billion. You feel that,
Yes.
you know, and you're like, oh, this is amazing. It's like, you like that? Also this, like, oh my God. Like
Yeah, like, no, please stop. I mean, that one time when I was in the fear, I was just like, I had my partner was with me at the time, and I thought it was over because I was doing a lot of work with my partner because he and I at the time were facilitating together. So every weekend we were sitting with the medicine purposefully, not with a bunch of people like in sacred ceremony. We were sitting with it together, with her together, he and I, so that we could facilitate at a higher level and have a deeper understanding of what was happening, right? So you have to have your own experience so that you can show up when somebody else needs you. Oh yeah, I get that. I remember that. Here's what's happening. Let me, put him on the healing mat and do this and this and this. And I remember grabbing his hand and I said, please don't leave. I don't consider myself to be a very fearful woman. And she had me on my knees that night. And so he had to ground me. And one of the things I'll never forget, and I've used it since, is breath sweeps mind. Get back into your body, start breathing, start doing your deep belly breaths, get back into your body. So you get out of your head. So she had mercy on me. And I remember towards the end of that experience, I felt, oh God, here it comes. The fear started to subside. 20 minutes, and I could feel the fear starting to subside. Oh God, oh my God, it's like, whew. And then I felt all the energy come up from literally like under my toenails up through my body. It was like, I can't even explain it. You'd have to have your own experience with that. And I could feel her coming up, and then I could feel the purge in my stomach. And then I somehow managed to grab my skirt up and I beelined it and barely made it to the bathroom because I really prefer private purges. Sometimes that's not always the case, therefore the bucket. And I remember when I got into the bathroom, I dropped to my knees, and I didn't even care if the toilet bowl was clean, because then when you're in that state, stuff like that, you don't have stories about, oh, I don't want to touch the lid and put it up. I remember this feeling of this powerful energy just came up and I just let it all out. And then I kind of just like fell on the floor like a rag doll. I said, oh my God, thank you so much, grandmother. Thank you for bringing me through that. And I flushed the toilet, and I saw everything in my life that didn't serve me anymore go down the toilet. So it's not always going to be bliss.
Well, I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's incredibly powerful. And like you said, you need an amazing guide. This is not a toy. If you're gonna you want the best guide, and that's where I was a little bit disheartened, where I would learn about these retreats and then I'd learn about the guide. It's like, you have that person guiding this. I was like, no. It's like, I don't know, going out in the middle of the sea with a captain and these you're going to get the craziest of weather, and you got, a newbie that barely knows what's going on. You need a master who can help, because there's a chance that you're going to get buckled to your knees, and you need help, like proper help that only certain people are equipped and have the knowledge and ability to give you. So yeah, it is absolutely not a toy. So I appreciate all of your perspective around that. I feel like that's very helpful for anybody considering if they want to go down that path and understanding the benefits, but also the severe nature of what it is. And I think you need to do enough self-work before you go in, and enough intention, and you'll know if you're ready to do that. And then the commitment to do the follow-up of the integration, and
Absolutely.
how you're going to do it. The last thing that I want to make sure that I ask you is, right now we're going through crazy times. Some people call it the awakening. Some people call it other things. From my research and what's written down from these people that are, I'll call them just buttholes, they don't have a very nice future lined up for people. It's very terrible, and it's freaking horrifying. Then I think about creation and life force spirit. I'm like, it's gonna be okay. But sometimes I get worried, especially being in Canada, because we're really getting smoked over here, and it's been 2 years of nonsense, and I don't see it going anywhere. How do you see things? What's your perspective of what's going on the planet now, and how do you see things moving forward? How do we navigate these times? Because people are losing their job, they're getting oppressed, they're being forced to do things. They've got this plan laid out that's absolutely horrible. In Australia, for example, they're taking from the first time ever, they're taking the indigenous, and it'll come for the regular population too, from their spot and putting them in concentration camps and force vaccinating. That's happening. It's also happening in northern Canada, and some of our indigenous are saying that there. So I think it's going to come for the regular population too, to a point. So I'm curious on your perspective on the current times and how we might be able to navigate those.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you. And I'll tell you, it's not like I haven't thought about it. That's my left brain ego, and the person that's in this 3D skin suit body, right? So part of me wants to say there's a part of me that feels normal when I do think about it. And there's a bigger part of me that my higher self, the divine that lives within me, because you are the divine. I am the divine. We are God, Goddess, Creator, Great Spirit. So I remind myself of that, of who I really am. And that helps me maintain my sense of groundedness. I remember my practices and rituals that are very important to help maintain my groundedness, which is the breathing, the restorative stretching, staying in the body, because if I'm not in my body, then I'm stuck in my head. I'm really taking extra time to be in a meditation around my heart. And so people ask, well, what does that mean? What do you mean be in my heart? Because people don't know. A lot of people don't know what it means to be in their heart. Well, here's the analogy that I give, the example that I give. Think about it. Everybody at least one point in their life had an animal as a pet, as a family, beloved family member, whether it was a dog, a cat, like I said, guinea pig, bunny, snake, bird. When you first had connection with that beloved pet, how did you feel, especially as a child? Oh my God, it was so beautiful. I loved that little puppy so much. That kitten was so sweet. I would just die for her. That's the feeling I'm talking about. Being in your heart, that feeling that you have, Matt, for your child, that deep love. You'd know without a shadow of a doubt that you'd take a bullet for your child. That feeling of love, we all have it in us. We just forgot. So I have to remind myself, because like I said, I'm in this human skin suit still, just like everybody else, to stay in the heart. Stay in the heart. The heart is the strongest energy. The most powerful life force energy is the heart, the space of love that comes from the heart, not the head. Like, I love you. No, I love you so much. That's what I'm talking about. And that, again, is a practice, especially when we're so disconnected with everything that's happening in the world. And then the other thing that I tell myself is, yes, I've heard stories that this is happening here and there. And there is a possibility that that's true, because if it's all an illusion, we're making it all up anyway. Then it could become a mind screw, right? So get out of your head and stay in your heart. Just stay in your heart of love. Work on loving yourself first and foremost, because you cannot give anybody or the world anything that you can't give yourself. Work on loving yourself and being in that space of pure unconditional love for yourself and all your inner children. And then take that and build it up and then send it out to the world. And I don't know if the Bible prophecies are true. I don't know if we're going to wake up tomorrow at the blink of an eye and be in a new earth, and everything's going to be crystalline and beautiful and vibrant and full of love. I don't know, but I know what I can do in this human skin suit. I can do my best to stay in my heart space of love. So that's the practice I'm going to ask you all to consider. Stay in your heart, practice it, and send that love out.
I love that. That is one of the most powerful answers I think I've had to that question I've been asking a lot of people. And the reason why I think so is because even when I observe on the news, and I think about this for myself often, where I'm looking at what's going on and trending, and I see things in a very 1,000-foot view. And so I want to know what's going on to make smart decisions and all the different things. But
Sure.
also, it's not happening to me directly. So I look at what is happening. There are things happening to me directly that are a pain in the butt, and I feel like being mindful of trends is okay, but only to a limit, only to
Yes.
the point of necessarily responding. So let's say out of your whole day of the 24 hours, maybe you spend up to 30 whole minutes looking at it. But that's 30 whole minutes of then the rest of your day is exactly what you're talking about. Heart-centered response. And I really loved that idea of remembering who you really are as an infinite being that has creator within them, that is incredibly powerful. So that reminder, so no matter what's going to happen in the external, and it doesn't matter, that's going to be not up to you. Just like if I just get smoked by a car, that's not up to me, you know what I
Right.
mean? So there's a lot of this, that there's the surrender mechanism. And I'm reminded by a quote, I think it's by Marcus Aurelius, that says, most men suffer more in their minds than they ever do in real life. And they had much more intense times, as I understand it, I think, anyway, going to war with, like,
Yeah.
bow and arrows and stuff. You got to march into battle and take a bow and arrow to the head. Like, that's not good. That's a stressful
Right.
situation to be like, I think war is coming. Oh no. So
Right. And
so
the other thing too is that whatever we put our focus on, there we are. We're going to intensify that energy. So if we continue to put our focus on whatever is happening in the world around us that's dark and heavy and negative and ugly and traumatic, then we keep facilitating, we keep building that energy up. So if we really focus on our heart space of unconditional love and acceptance for all, then we can continue to build that up. We can shift. That's my belief. And all I can tell you is we shall see. And then until then, I'm going to stay here as much and as often as I can. And that means forgiving, being able to forgive people that we feel have hurt and harmed us. Because that's not unconditional love if we can't forgive people. So I'll leave you with that.
beautiful. Well, I love that. I think that's an important addition as well, especially in these times that are very divided. You can see some people are not offering that, and it just seems like that's the virus. Their mind has been hijacked. They're getting rid of friends and family and loved
Yes.
ones and all these different things. And so I always say my door is open. I'm open to have a conversation. But unfortunately, the hijacking of, it's literally the mind. The TV comes in and takes the mind and is just steering these people who are in hypnosis. It's a waking hypnosis state, and
Yes.
they do have the technology to do that, and it's not that complicated. Don't think about an American flag. Don't think about a pink sheep. Your mind does it because that's how easy it is. So you add that with vibration and all these other things and all the other things they know about psychology. It's a very powerful recipe. And so if you're able to stay clear-minded in love and centeredness and compassion and also surrender, it's very powerful. And I feel like, like you said, if the creator could, like you talked about that love example, right? For my daughter, like that pet. Well, I feel like that's the love our creator has for us. And if we were put here and we can see this, we're the ones that are going to respond to this situation, or we're in this situation to learn and evolve our souls. We're not sure, because this has to be a mystery for us to evolve in a way where we made the free will choice to evolve or not. And so that's really critical to what's going on here. So this entire show has been beautiful. I loved your perspective and who you
Thank
are. I
you.
appreciate you and your work and everything you shared so candidly and beautifully. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about, or you wish that I'd asked before we close the show?
No, well, no, nothing else I'd like to talk about. I just want to just reiterate one more time that if we stay in our heart and feel that love for self, therefore others, then that's what we're going to send out to the universe at a collective consciousness level. We only have two choices: fear or love. So which one will you choose? That's all. Thank you. I appreciate this very much. I appreciate you too, Matt.
Well, thank you so much. And I'll just add on one thing. At the last podcast I did with Dr. Shamanic and Dr. P, she said there's this parable in the Bible where Jesus is I don't know exactly know what happened. She said it, but there was like a situation where someone's in fear or anger or whatever the case is. And he just said, choose again. So if we get to fear and love, choose again, choose again, choose again. And we do have that ability. That's our free will. And so it's like you said, it's a practice, right? You're coming back to one of the additional things is it's a practice to know the creator. It's a practice, right? Just like eating, just like anything you do, the more you practice, the better you are at it. So practice this remembering of love for yourself and knowing that you are a part of creation and that you're perfect and divine as you are, and moving to the fear, loving, and give that fear to the creator or creation, because we've always been in uncertainty. When you were 2 years old or 5 years old and you couldn't function, you're still here, right? You didn't get taken out, right?
Yes.
So, you're being watched over, and your time will come when it's necessary, and it's not the end. It's an evolution. So honor the life that you have here and the inner voice within you. And that, I think, that will guide you. So
Beautiful.
where can people find you if they want to dive into your work and what you're putting out there?
Thank you for asking. The best place would be my website, and that's DIVINE divinemountainretreat.com. It has my contact info, I think it may even have my phone number. So that's fine. That would be the best place. And it has a little bit more information about my work and what I do here.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming on and all your work. And I just appreciate this.
Thank you very much. Until we meet again, namaste, brother.
Namaste.